Hello everyone, this is Rodin, and again we'll be going over our school block series with another lesson today. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about short-term versus long-term trading strategies. I was, actually this topic kind of came to me all of a sudden, to be honest. I was thinking about how to approach chart reading, and I found myself having to almost always come back to, all right, this is the short-term strategy, this is a long-term strategy. So I really thought it'd be prudent to actually go over fundamentally the differences between the two before we really get that deep into chart reading. And I'm not really not in a hurry to actually show chart reading, because as far as the in-game interface is concerned, it's actually quite limited what we can see in the first place. So yeah, no big rush there. I think it's okay it's actually very smart to actually go over the fundamentals and tackle these kind of large topics so that we'll have a much better base to properly do the chart reading for technical analysis. Alright, so specifically for today, we're going to be going over short-term traders and some stock examples of what they would trade, long-term traders and their stock examples, and we're going to piece it all together and going over balancing effort and profit. Okay. So before we get started on this one, I just want to give my personal experience with this. So I basically have made that transition from being a short-term trader to a long-term trader, and I'm going to highlight that using the subtopics that we're going to be using here. All right, so but that's kind of my general scope of this topic. I've done both. I've transitioned from one to the other. All right, so a good portion of this is actually based on personal experience. All right, short-term traders and stock examples. All right, so we're going to describe short-term traders, their strategies. Okay, so high frequency turnovers. What does that mean? It's very active. All right, a lot of people think of trading as, oh, it's very passive. It is generally passive, and by that we mean you don't always have to be logged on to see a result. All right, there's a fair amount of preparation, but if you execute on your preparation, then as long as you're managing the process as a whole, for the most part you'll be okay. You have a good chance of actually making a profit if you manage if you identify the process and manage it. Okay. So short-term traders, think of these guys as kind of the stereotypical buy low, sell high, one ISK warriors in JITA. All right. So that's what we mean. That's what I mean when I talk about short-term traders. All right. The guys who are literally on, and the majority of their existence in game, as far as their trader tune or their industry tune, is to just adjust buy and sell orders by one ISK to be the most competitive order at the time, and do it again every 10 minutes. So it's very active. All right. So why should you trade like that, or why would you want to trade like that? If you have the time, you totally should do it. If you genuinely enjoy kind of just that, it's still quite passive though when you think about it. All you're doing really is right-click, modify order. All right. Yeah, I mean, it's if you are able to devote a fair amount of time into trading, and you're okay with being able to do a task that is quite monotonous, and it can be profitable. It really can be. You can see some big profit intraday doing this. For some people, of course, that's the holy grail, right? Like, oh, I made a lot of money today. Made a lot of money today. My ISK per hour today was whatever, 300 million or something like that, something crazy like that. All right, but it's high effort, man. It really is high effort. A lot of the times, you're not even looking anymore what the item is. At least that's how I found that's what I found myself doing. I wasn't even concerned about what the item was anymore. I basically am not that concerned with fundamental analysis when I'm looking at short-term trading. My main indicator of whether to buy or sell something actually is just a profit margin. Okay, I know that if I'm going to play actively in, say, I don't know, a 2 to 4 hour time span in the evenings, and I can do that consistently, I don't even care what the item is. As long as the profit margin is at least what I'm looking for, then I'll attack it. I'll go ahead and buy it, and I'll go ahead and sell it. Now, with that being said, I will go through lots and lots and lots of individual items. All right. So one of the things to consider if short-term trading is what you're aiming for, you should probably look at your skill and see how many active orders you can maintain. Like literally, like how many orders can your character hold? Because if you're doing this in an almost like mechanical but super efficient way, you're gonna find yourself getting really close to cracking 100 plus daily orders managed easily. Especially if you're doing this in a major hub like Cheetah. That's the only thing too. Also, though, guys, is doing short-term trading in any other place other than Cheetah. I've personally never done that, so I don't know if there's any value in that. But using my experience, I would imagine that that's not a very attractive option. I would think that's not a very attractive option. But hey, that's just me. If you found success in doing that, good on you. But that's just not me. All right. What else about short-term traders? Let's talk about capital. Capital ISK. You probably won't really need that much. If you're just beginning to do trading and you don't have that much liquidity, doing short-term trading may be a good starting point for you. Now, why would I say that? I say that because you're going to have a lot more continuous action during the session. There's a higher probability of actually gaining more profit per session. Okay, so in the short term, at least, you have a much better chance of making money. And the more money you make, as long as you're rolling it right back into your trading bankroll, then you are able to either buy more line items or buy more expensive items to turn over. Okay, so short-term trading, it's very active. Don't need nearly as big of a capital as long-term trading. Okay. All right. Now, of course, this should be the better choice for someone who wants to make a lot of ISK in a shorter amount of time, assuming you're okay with doing the effort. Okay. All right. Now let's go over some examples of items that would be attractive to flip if you're a short-term trader. So when I was doing this specifically, I was going for volume. Volume is another key indicator, all right? Especially depending on the actual time zone that you're playing in. So I'm US time zone right now. Yeah, I mean, by the time, even in Cheetah, in US time zone, that's dead time for the game in general, all right? So it's not a lot of activity. There's not a lot of action versus, say, European time zone. Okay, so for something like that, I actually focus more on it. Eventually, my scheme of maneuvers became this: I would focus more on adjusting buy orders, and once I actually have gotten a fair amount of that matched, that's when I would plop it back into the sell orders. All right. Because at the time I was managing on, I think, 120 active orders, no less than 120 active orders daily on that one, and I was literally just going down the line, one isking everything, 1 to 120, and by the time that I'm done there, about 15 minutes would have passed, and I'd do it all over again. Another 15 minutes would pass, and I would do it all over again. I literally did that for like 2 hours straight. I did that for months at a time. That was my experience with short-term trading. Did I make a lot of money? Yes, I did. I made easily 10 to 20% net profit every week on based on my capital. So it was really good to. It's a really good payout considering the amount of ISK that I had to risk for that operation. So it was really good. All right. So what kind of items did I trade? High volume items. Ammo actually works really well. Drones work really well. Certain meta modules. But what I mean by certain meta modules, some meta modules see a lot of use, some don't. Yeah, that's just the way it is. All right. I'll give you an example. As far as the damage controls, the IFFA meta modules for damage controls is there's no other reason to get the other kind. It's too expensive for one. All right. Things like modules that would be appropriate for frigates or cruiser sized ships move very well. Okay. We're talking propulsion modules. More often than not, people would rather use the meta modules anyway versus the Tech 2 variants, simply because of the fitting cost. All right, so that's a key feature there. Ammo, I actually do more faction ammo more than anything. There's actually a considerable amount of volume that go through faction ammo, believe it or not. Especially for, Jita is not just, first and foremost, it's a Caldari hub, and then becomes a universal hub. All right, so Caldari anything sells very well in Jita. All right. So I flipped a lot of faction light missile launchers. I flipped a lot of faction rockets. And what else did I flip? Medium shield extenders. I flipped those a lot too. Okay. So as far as identifying what's a good volume point for you, that's going to be up to your experience. How much work are you going to be willing to do to flip those? Okay. And as far as raw materials concerned, I still don't really do minerals or ores, but even back then I actually was doing low level PI. What I mean by low level PI is P0 to P3. There's an incredible amount of volume that goes with Jita. All right, for the most part, when it comes to PI at least, Jita really is the world. It is the universe's distribution warehouse. All right, a lot of P0s go there in the, you're talking about volume in the millions here. So there is a natural margin to those, and it's actually a lot more generous considering that you can buy and sell in citadels that have near zero taxes on buy or sell. Okay. All right, so wrapping up short-term trading and its examples, it's high activity. All right. The expectation is you're gonna be constantly adjusting orders. Okay. The expectation is you should be making more than long-term traders in the time horizon that we're talking about, short-term. All right. So a good way to measure your success, honestly, when it comes to short-term trading, is how much you made per session. If you're not happy with how much you made per session, either you're doing it too slowly, honestly, and it's not to say that, but you may be doing it too slowly. You're taking it too passively when you should be playing it a lot more actively. Or you may simply be playing items that don't see a lot of volume. You really got to rely on volume. Will be your best indicator as far as deciding whether to buy or sell an item. It has to be. You need to look at that. So you need to actually look at the chart for that one. Okay. And we talked about high volume items again. All right, you're gonna hear that a lot. Volume. Short-term trading equals volume. All right. So popular meta modules, drones, ammo, faction variants of it is fine. Low-level PI, because a lot of people actually, why is low-level PI a good thing to trade for short-term traders? Because not everyone has like a dozen PI tunes that they can call on to go through the entire harvesting and processing of PI. a lot of people like myself just focused on processing. I bought and sold my inputs in Jita. All right, so that's why low level PI is going to be a good item for you for a short-term trader, because people will dump it and then people will want to buy it, and then you can play both sides. Okay. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, long-term trading and stock examples. All right, so this is where I found myself now. This is where I find myself now as far as my personal style. So talked about short-term trading, gave you guys my personal examples of that one, and now long-term trading and some stock examples. So this is how I approach my long-term trading strategy. Prioritize fundamental analysis and determining value. This is super important, guys. Really, really important. You have to be able to articulate to yourself, why is this item of value to players? Why is this item going to be needed by PvP players, PvE players, whatever the case may be? All right, you have to kind of know the item. And on previous lessons, we talked about very briefly how things are produced, or in general how they appear in Jita. All right, you have to know that stuff, because that stuff will eventually be the cause of price going up or down. Okay, along with, of course, its genuine demand. All right, so you have to know all that stuff about the item. So how does it get made? Is it a loot drop item? Is this a tech 2 item, a tech 3, what have you? You gotta know the production end of that equation. Okay, and then from there you're gonna need to find out the value. Is this something that you see players will be using 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 1 year from now? All right, if it's a common enough item like a module, it's a lot easier, I think, to determine value of a module versus a ship, because when ships get rebalanced, a lot of times it feels like it gets rebalanced with a hammer. All right, it doesn't get rebalanced with a surgical knife. It's rebalanced with a hammer a lot of times. So it feels like, at least as far as what the actual end users feel like anyway. All right, so be wary of that. See, we'll typically need larger capital investment. Very, very true. And the reason that is because you're holding on to the item. So when you think about long-term trading, think about it as the actual folks that are, kind of like the real life analogy, right? The actual folks in Wall Street that are buying and selling large amounts of stock, all right, with the intent of holding it for some time and then flipping it once the value has increased. That's really all it is. We're not, as long-term traders, I actually am not concerned with the profit margin right then and there. I'm not concerned. What I'm more concerned with is, am I buying this item at a point where it is attractive to buy because for whatever market reason the price is low. That can be just, hey, the thing is just a lot of people are engaged in this item right now and it's dropping the price. All right, just an oversupply in the market in general, or it just can be player sentiment. All right, or something there's been an abundance in the materials needed to make it, whatever the case may be. All right, I need to, as a long-term trader, your first job is actually, or one of your jobs would be, to identify value and find a place where to buy it that would be attractive. All right, by basically buying it at a low. All right, in the context of not just for that day, but in the context of however long your time horizon is. 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, whatever. All right. And because you're going to be potentially holding on to something for a while, you're going to need a larger capital investment, because once you bought that item, and if there isn't enough profit to have, for that move to have made sense, and you're probably going to have to hold on to it, right? And you're holding on to it, then your money's locked up on that item. You don't have the liquidity to actually keep playing, or keep playing the market like that. Right, so typically speaking, long-term trading strategies will need more capital investment. All right, expecting to work beyond the confines of a single station or region. So this is one of the things I did in the beginning, as I was kind of making that transition between being a short-term trader to a long-term trader, is taking advantage of the types of items that are typically bought or sold at more reasonable prices from different hubs. So I'm talking about hub-to-hub trading, okay? You may find yourself with, so I did this, actually, believe it or not, I did this a lot for Plex. So the Plex scene, before the Plex Vault, I was actually that guy that moved Plex. I successfully moved Plex from hub to hub. And then just as I did that, they came up with the Plex Vault. I was like, well, I'm not doing that anymore, because then, you know, that market's going to be shot. All right. So basically what I did was I bought Plex basically in Jita, because that would be the cheapest you can find it. And then I sold it to other hubs. I sold it in Amar. I sold it in the Dixie. And typically I would see anywhere from like 2 to 3% more profit when I do that. Now 2 to 3% doesn't seem like a lot, but when you are dealing with something that's of high value per item, that can equal big bucks, honestly. So that's what I mean by that. When you start thinking of long-term trading, you have to think with a much bigger scope. So at that time, for that specific example, I was thinking more of the relationship between a single item and multiple hubs. So you have to kind of step back a little bit and see what you can take advantage of regarding that item or how it behaves in the different hubs. All right, expect to turn profit in months as opposed to intraday. We talked about that. All right, so the expectation of the payout is simply much longer for long-term traders. It can be, you know, a day, a week, a month, a year, like I said. All right, but so be prepared to kind of hold on to it. You know, you're gonna be in a, it's a commitment. It's a commitment. For short-term trading, you can much more quickly cut your losses doing a short-term trade move versus a long-term trade move. Because if you cut your loss potentially in a long-term trading move, that probably means much more money versus, you know, you're probably talking billions when your losses could just be whatever you've devoted for that intraday session for a short-term trader, you know, so something to consider. All right, what kind of items would be useful for long-term traders? Raw materials, that's a gimme. All right, minerals, that's a gimme. All right, if you look at, we'll take titanium as an example because it's kind of like a classic example. So if you take titanium, when I joined the game in 2009, titanium was literally like 1 ISK something. It's like 1.2 ISK or something like that. And looking at it now, it's literally like 5 times plus that value. But it took years to get there. So, of course, and there were, you know, spikes and dives along the way. So raw materials is an excellent choice for long-term traders, just simply because of its very nature. It's a very high volume item, and when it moves, it does move for the most part. It does genuinely increase in value. It just does it very, very slowly. But if you're okay with that, then that's a good item to get into. All right.
Can I kick in a
Another
point?
type of item that would be good for long-term traders would be rarity-based items. What do I mean by that? Basically, what I mean is faction. All right, it can be Navy faction, or it can also be pirate faction. The rarity of an item, because you can't. So basically, you can't will it to existence. You know what I mean? You either are exchanging loyalty points, or you're hoping for the RNG gods to smile upon you and drop you that Macarial blueprint. All right. Because of the nature of how those types of things enter the game, they will always be increasing in value, assuming that the drop rate makes sense. All right. Now, do be careful when it comes to items that don't be too invested. All right. So I'm gonna come back. I know I'm gonna come back to this example because we covered it last episode. So if you were a guy that was heavily invested in small ancillary armor wrappers, and believe me, there were actually a lot of people that were invested in this. When CCP changed when they basically turned the faucet off, or on rather, turned the faucet on, and basically allowed more blueprint copies of small ancillary armor wrappers to enter the game, that dropped the price. It went basically from 5 to 7 million to 230K in the span of, I think, like maybe 2 months. So that's a huge loss. That's several-fold loss in value. All right. So do be careful when you're looking at rarity-based items. You have to keep yourself abreast with news of loot drop rebalancing. You have to. And finally, a good item to trade if you're intending to be a long-term trader would be player services. By player services, I mean the category player services when you look at the market window. So that's Plex, Extractor, Injector, multiple character training, and maybe the Resculptor. I'm not too keen on Resculptor, but that technically falls under player services as well. All right. So why those items? Because those items actually have zero bearing. They have zero bearing on the price of ores. They have zero bearing on the price of PI or anything like that. They're not part of the economy in that sense, right? They're not part of the production line in that sense, because CCP makes them. They just make them appear. You know what I mean? So what drives those prices are actually player sentiment and their relationship to each other. So I know we've covered this several times before, but there's a parity between Plex, Extractor, Injector. All right. There's a lag in that relationship, but it exists. All right. And that's really the only indicator for those items. Their indicators are each other. All right. And of course, you got sales, when CCP does sales and stuff like that. All right. Generally speaking, those things do increase in value over time in a very steady fashion. I remember when Plex was introduced, the very first time I saw Plex in the market window, it was selling for 200 mil, the large Plex at the time. So at one point, the large Plex was selling for 1.4, 1.5 billion, and it only took about 3-4 years to get there. It seems like a long time, 3-4 years, but when you think about it, EVE's a long game. If you're a long-term trader, that's a big commitment. So that's really one thing to be wary of too. All right. A lot of people kind of dismiss that. They think, oh, I know I'm gonna make money. Yeah, of course you're gonna make money, but are you gonna be around to actually cash out? I know of several traders who left the game and then they actually never got to cash out. they just left. They just left. So do be careful of the reality of that. All right, I'll go for our last section here. All right, our last section is balancing effort and profit. We kind of were talking about this the whole time, so but just kind of want to recap with it. All right, be aware of how much time you can devote to market play. Get this wrong and you're more likely to suffer losses. That is so true. And I experienced this when I was making that transition between short-term trading and long-term trading. I was starting to trade items that's more appropriate for long-term traders, but I was executing the trades as if they were short-term. So I was basically buying. I got caught quite badly on this. I was basically trying to flip Plex. I was trying to flip Plex, same in Jita, and instead of holding on to it, knowing that certain balancing updates were happening and all this, I was quite intent in just flipping it. And there were times where I was flipping it at a loss or a very, very, very small margin of profit. So, things like that. Certain things are just more appropriate for intraday flipping. Certain things are just more appropriate for holding on and just putting it basically under your, putting it in your space mattress and then come back to it in like 3 months later. So be aware of that. Be aware of the style of how you're trading, because that's going to dictate the time needed to do it and the types of items that's more appropriate. Okay. All right. Next one is ultimately either strategy is viable. I've done both. They are viable. Focus on what will more likely work for you. So this is where a little bit of honesty goes a long way. Don't trick yourself into thinking that. Well, let me restart that. Be honest with how much you can actually devote to this activity. Be honest when you say, are you actually having fun with this? Can you continue doing this because it's fun? Or does it feel more like a job? Even though you may be successful and like you're making a lot of profit and things like that, but if it feels like a job, you're less likely to actually continue with it. So that's something that's kind of your own personal preferences, right? With how you want to spend your time, because ultimately you're the one that's going to be playing the market game. You're the one that's going to be hauling stuff from Jita to Amar and to Dixie. You're the one that's going to have to be making deals with your alliance mates or stuff like that. Okay, so focus on the one that works for your specific situation and how you want to play. Okay, and finally, do what you enjoy. As long as you execute discipline, you'll be successful in the long run. Yeah, that's so true, man. A lot of people do So I kind of made this transition kind of in the mindset too. Before, when I was doing short-term trading specifically, I was so intent in making a profit. Gotta make profit, gotta make profit, gotta make money. As I slowly made that transition to being a long-term trader, I was less focused on making money and more focused on having a good process. And that was such a eureka moment for me, because of course there's going to be times where you're just going to take a loss. You're gonna take a loss, misclick, whatever. It can be, from a misclick to I totally read that chart wrong. Okay, but as long as for me, as long as I adhered to it, as long as I identified a process and adhered to it, more often than not, I will make money off it. It just will take time. Okay. And yeah, so my focus has changed, and that's you'll see that as a trader. You'll see that as a market person. Your focus will change because certain things will have more value as you progress through that activity. So basically, for me, I valued profit in the beginning, but as I matured in that gameplay style, what I valued was more adhering to a process and having a set of rules that I can follow for myself. That I found that more valuable than just the profit. The profit was just an afterthought, to be honest. As long as I was doing the right thing, I should be making money. That's basically how I thought about it. All right, so hopefully I was able to identify the differences. They're pretty fundamental differences. They're not, it's not, I didn't flood you guys with examples or anything like that between short-term trading and long-term trading, items that may be appropriate for that. And hopefully you guys learned something. It was really fun doing this episode because I got to revisit ideas that I definitely just haven't thought of for a while, because I've made that transition between, the two types of traders. And now that I'm still trying to fix up my own process, especially that, being a one account player now, it's just a little different. I don't have the same vision as I used to, having multiple traders and whatnot. So it's, I myself am improving my process. All right. Well, thanks very much, guys, for sticking around and listening. Hopefully you learned something, like I said. And I definitely will be working on the next lesson. Hopefully, eventually we'll get to the charts. I swear, we'll eventually get to the charts. I just really want to cover a lot of the basic stuff here so that when we do get to the charts, it's going to basically pull everything together. It's going to make a lot more sense a lot more easily. Okay. Well, thanks for listening, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye.